What's the most embarrassingly awkward situation you ever encountered while staying at a friend's house as a kid? My friend's mom, Mrs. O, was an amazing woman. When I was around 7, I was attending a sleepover at my friend's house. We were getting ready for bed. A few of us were waiting in the hall, and one of the other girls was taking forever in the bathroom. I had to go really bad. Mrs. O was standing in the hallway near me when it happened. I lost control and peed my pants right there. And luckily, none of the others noticed it except Mrs. A. You know what that wonderful woman did? She suddenly shrieks something about a spider and accidentally throws the glass of juice she happened to be holding all over me. She made a big enough fuss to draw all attention away from me, grabbed a towel and wrapped me up while apologizing profusely about how she's terrified of spiders and lost control. She gave me spare pajamas to wear while she washed my clothes and had me take a shower so I wouldn't attract ants. None of the other girls had any idea what really happened and thought Mrs. O was nuts. She's my hero. She sounds like a wonderful woman. How about while a friend was staying at my house? Friend was supposed to spend the night, but her mom didn't come to pick her up in the morning, or the morning after that. I don't remember how long she stayed, but after 4 days, my mom eventually drove my friend to her, my friend's, grandmother's house. I was at my best friend of 10 years' house, and in the middle of dinner with his family, his parents decided to announce to their children, and me, that they would be getting a divorce and splitting up the family. My friend didn't talk much that night, and the worst part was that I couldn't leave, because my parents were out of town and I was staying with them. You were the control group. I was at a group sleepover for a neighbor's birthday party. At night when I wanted to sleep, the girls were being way too loud. So, I went to go sleep in her brother's room. He was out at his own sleepover. I opened the door and saw that their aunt was in the bed. No big deal, except she shouted, "Close the door or I'll slit your fricking throat." I was 9. What the frick? That's insane. Went upstairs at a friend's house so she could ask her mother permission to walk downtown. Mother and boyfriend are nude, clearly have just finished having intercourse and make no move to cover themselves from other people's 11-year-old's eyes. Maybe adult nudity shouldn't be a big deal, but my friend was clearly embarrassed. Her mother had also been separated from her father for less than a year at the time. Her older sister came into the room as we were leaving to ask them how the frick they thought having sex with the door open was appropriate in the middle of the afternoon in a house full of neighboring children. I was at a friend's house when we were both 11-12 years old. I had the bright idea of biking down to the nearest grocery store to get snacks, so he asked his dad for permission. His dad said no, so my friend started arguing, then crying, then throwing an all-out temper tantrum. He ended up getting spanked and sent to his room while I got a ride back home. I just sat and stared at the wall the whole time it was going down and felt like it was my fault because I suggested it. I know that feeling. Had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and ended up plugging the toilet. I figured if I keep flushing it'll go down. Nope. Flooded the bathroom with poop water. Another time. Same friend, same toilet, also in the middle of the night. The water pipe was frozen but I really had to go. So I ended up leaving a big rank pile of liquidy crap in the dry bowl. In the morning the whole downstairs smelled awful and his parents wouldn't make eye contact. You figure that they won't invite you back after the first time. At a buddy's house in like 4th grade, him and his little brother were arguing about whose turn it was to do the dishes. The dad got pee, grabbed them both by the head and slammed them together. It made that lovely thwack sound. They both started crying and the dad turns and says to me, "You think Thea'll do the dishes now?" I was quite scared and left ASAP. Oh god, I was maybe 10 and staying over at a friend who had moved across town's house. Somewhere in the middle of the night he and his brother decided to strip completely naked and shake their dongs around wildly. I was confused of course, and then they tried to get me to join. When I told them I wasn't having any of that, they tried to wrestle my clothes off of me. I broke free, called my mom on the home phone. It was like 230 am, and waited out front for her to pick me up. Never talked to Tyler again. I know a guy named Tyler in college and he does the dong shake randomly to pee of other guys. When I was in the 4th grade, I had a friend who I spent every weekend with. We stayed at his house and watched movies or played games. This particular day, we were about 5 hours into a Grand Theft Auto playthrough. We ran out of things to talk about, so we had been pretty quiet for a while. He turned to me, with the biggest smile on his face, and let out one of the biggest farts I've ever heard. I knew that I had to try to beat his fart, so I let one out. It wasn't as loud, but it was much longer. We both sat there for a bit laughing. When he let another one rip, it was even louder and longer than both of our other farts combined. Try and beat that one, he said. I prepped myself, getting ready for the fart of my life. I looked him in the eyes and let that fart fly. Only, there was no fart, but there was a filling feeling in my pants. Are you going to do it? He hadn't caught on that I just filled my pants with crap right in his room. I told him that he beat me and I excused myself to the bathroom. I sat there for 20 minutes trying to figure out what to do. I finally made my decision. I emptied his bathroom garbage, took the bag and stuck my poopy underwear in it. I stuck the bag in my pocket and left the bathroom. Hey man, what took so long? I'm leaving. Why shut up? I ran towards the door, jumped on my crappy BMX bike, and pedaled as fast as I could back to my house. TLDR, Grand Theft Poopy Pants. Not gonna lie, you handled that pretty dang well. Kid's dad brings us dinner at the table. He gets a sippy cup. His dad asks me if I need one or if I can be trusted not to spill on the table. I say I don't need one. I immediately knock my drink all over the table. We were at least 10 years old. I knock drinks over regularly now. I was at one of my friend's houses for Easter this year and all of his aunts were drinking wine out of sippy cups so that they wouldn't spill when they were all blackout drunk. Not a terrible idea. I was staying over at a friend's house with a couple other neighborhood kids. My friend's parents essentially locked my friends and I in the basement for the night so we could have our sleepover down there. And once the door was shut, my friend's parents get into a huge fight over some inane crap. It was horrible. It sounded like they were screaming at the absolute top of their lungs, throwing plates around, flipping furniture, and at one point I think I heard one of them threaten to get a gun and start shooting. But the worst part was the 2 hours of angry make-up sex in their creaky bed that followed their tirade. AWW, that's so sweet that they made up afterwards. I went to spend the night with a girl from class for the first time. I was excited too. She was one of those girls everyone was afraid of and I was really timid and shy. Within an hour of getting there, her mom and sister got into a huge screaming argument. The mom stabbed herself in the leg with a butcher's knife. As a result of the fight, I'm not sure why, her dad loaded up the mom, sister, my friend and me into their tiny car to take the mom to the hospital. The mom was stating the whole time she wouldn't go in. We all sat in the parking lot as they argued for about an hour. We drove back to her house without going into the air. Mom, sister, and dad began fighting again. This was around midnight. I called my mom to check in and tell her goodnight and gave her the secret phrase to come home. I forgot to bring my toothbrush. We feigned a family emergency and she came to get me. Never did get an offer to sleep over again. The secret phrase to come get me thing is a really good idea for kiddos spending the night at a friend's house. The time when, at age 9, I marched up to my best friend Becky's mom and said, "Becky isn't adopted. Joe just said that she was adopted." Joe was her older brother. Becky's mom just stood there, awkwardly, then said it was time for me to go home. Turns out Becky was adopted. Her parents hadn't told her yet. I have no idea why her brother felt the need to tell me and not his sister. I'm adopted, and one of my siblings would make me cry when I was younger telling me I'm adopted, and my parents didn't tell me for a very long time. I asked my cousin when I was like 13, and I don't know. I cried. I wish they were honest in the first place. My friend had a problem where he wet the bed. One time a few people and I were over at his house and his butthole dad came in his room and berated him about wetting the bed. He was embarrassing him about it and even punished him. He made us all go home because of something my friend couldn't control. I guess you can say that was pretty awkward. That's how my parents, and my niece's parents were with her. She would wet the bed until she was like 8 or 9. That's really not the way to do it. I stayed at a mate's house once when I was around 9. In the morning as I was eating breakfast, his dad just decides to sit beside me and pull a bong. at 8 AM. I was supposed to meet my friend at his house at around 5 because he had some appointment with his mom. I get there at probably 4:45 and head up to their back deck. My house was a couple blocks behind his, so I always came this way. So I go up to their big glass doors and I see his dad getting railed by the next door neighbor. I have never told him this, but I can never be in a room alone with his dad again. TLDR. I saw my friend's dad getting railed. Gay sex people. Friend's dad was getting a penis in his anus. The lesson here is to know your family's schedule. You never know when your son's creepy friend will show up. 3 AM. My friend and I stop playing Halo for a bit and go to get some water cause we were thirsty. Walk into the kitchen to see his dad's girlfriend giving his dad head in the middle of the room. We stayed thirsty all night. Everyone stayed thirsty, except dad's girlfriend. Walked into the toilet in the middle of the night to find his mum shaving her butthole with an electric razor. My friend's sister had a birthday party and I was invited. We were 16. We got really drunk. My friend, for the first time, where I live it is legal to get drunk at 16. And when we went home I slept in his bed. My friend's bed is really high up, like +2 meters, and I puked in the middle of the night on him. He slept on the floor, resulting in splashing all over his room. I spent the rest of the night cleaning his room. The next day I got invited for lunch and they made special food for his sister's birthday and I could not make eye contact with anyone. So embarrassing. He is still one of my best friends and his room smelled for another 6 months because of my vomiting. Always have a good laugh when we think about this story. At least you can laugh at this rather than being embarrassed about it. 5th grade. Started hanging out with a kid I never really did before and he had a sleepover with our mutual friends for his birthday. Everything was great. Played N64 all night in his basement and his mom was cooking all sorts of food and being generally awesome. Gets late, we all start falling asleep in the basement. Then dad gets home drunk as all heck. His parents proceeded to scream and beat the crap out of each other all while we were in the basement witnessing the entire ordeal upstairs. After about 10 minutes we hear his older sister enter the scuffle, trying to stop it and get them to calm down and stop. Dad hits the sister. Mom pulls a knife out and starts threatening dad. Sister runs away. Dad throws a lamp and promptly exits the house with various name calling and swearing. All quiet upstairs except for his mom crying. We hear her on the phone and shortly after a cop shows up to file a report, I assume, and an aunt shows up to console mom. We all kind of fall asleep wondering what the frick happened. Next morning we go upstairs and see some damage, but the mess is cleaned up. We try engaging with his mom and she seems okay, just worn down. We offer to take some trash bags outside for her and see some ripped up presents in the garbage can outside. That night his dad took off and filed for divorce not long after, and his sister didn't come home for a few days, until they were pretty positive he wouldn't be back. TLDR. Went to my friend's birthday party and ended up with his parents' divorce and sister running away. That's rough. I've only had an experience like that once, but it was recent, and with my ex's sister and her husband. It was just bad. It wasn't as bad as your story though, but I felt so uncomfortable. I was at my friend's house and his parents told him that after I left he had to take a bath. He started throwing a fit, crying and screaming, I refuse and I just stood there on the steps not knowing what to do. His parents remained calm through the fit, but I couldn't take it anymore and kinda slinked out the back door. He was an interesting kid. I was at my friend's house, age 11. Anytime I wasn't in school or at home I was there, so his family was used to me being around. This time a little too much. We were in the kitchen making food when his dad strolls in after a shower, expecting only his son to be there, and flashes him while letting rip. I'll never forget it, the horror. Amazed that nobody wants to comment on this. Okay, here we go. I was about 12 and sleeping over at a friend's house. There was an argument between him and his brother and they started fighting. Now, I'm lying on the bottom bunk pretending to be asleep when their mother storms in and heads straight to the top bunk, where the fight is happening. At this point I open my eyes to realize that the mother is wearing nothing but a very large t-shirt that goes down to just below the hip. The mother reaches the bunk beds and proceeds to reach out to restrain the brothers. In doing so, the large t-shirt comes up to reveal what can only be described as a hairy beast. She had no underwear on whatsoever. I look at it for about 8 seconds before the t-shirt covers it again after she's done telling off the brothers. I lie there in shock before exclaiming to my friend, "I've just seen your mum's fanny." He laughed his head off. TL. DR sleeping at friends. Brothers get into a fight above me on bunk bed. Their mother comes in wearing just a t-shirt, lifts her arms up to reach the top bunk. I get an eye full of waffle when he pulled out a machete from under the bed at 3 AM and said he used it to cut lizards' heads off. In the morning, I walked in on his little brother not masturbating but just playing with his junk in the middle of the living room. I noped the frick out and never went back. Was staying at friend's house in the country for the weekend in 5th grade. They had a lot of animals, including 2 adorable lab puppies. Unfortunately, none of their animals were treated and one of the puppies got distemper and died. I guess it happened quite quickly, I don't know. We were outside and my friend's dad and brother were looking at the other puppy, which was being extremely playful. They said it was a sign of distemper. Then they beat the puppy to death with a hammer. No one was happy about this, nor did anyone seem to mind that they were surrounded by kids. I don't know jack crap about distemper. This is the first time I've thought about it in over a decade for sure, so I can't really remember how my 11-year-old brain processed that. I remember my friend, a girl, was crying but I wasn't. I was comforting her for some reason, saying, "Don't worry, it'll be okay." Weird. Well, glad I got that off my chest. TL. Doctor, my friend's dad beat a puppy to death with a hammer because it had distemper. That's not a sign of distemper. It would be the opposite. They would be lethargic, vomiting, and just other stuff. That puppy was okay. What he did was extremely cruel. Well, I've posted this story on Reddit before, but it is appropriate for this thread. Back when I was in middle school, my friends and I used to play airsoft, and we took it seriously. We had expensive guns, armor, the whole nine. Anyway, we used to play back in the woods behind our neighborhood, in the middle of which there was a field. So, we're playing, and I'm on the edge of the field. Along the edge of said field, there are piles of mulch that had to be at least 9 feet high. We used them for cover. Well, I saw my friends on the opposing team approaching, so I ran as fast as I could, and jumped next to one of the mulch piles. Except, I fell in. As I roll back out, I can feel the barrage of airsoft bullets hitting me. I'm out. I'm out. Jesus, stop shooting, I begged. We never started, they replied. This is when I look down to see that I am covered in fire ants. I couldn't even see the color of my shirt. Panicking, I start trying to rip off my clothes, but I remember that I'm wearing armor which someone else has to help me remove. So, I endure the pain as my friends run across the field to me, and eventually remove the armor. As soon as they do, I strip naked as I begin running back through the woods and onto the main street of my neighborhood, down a few blocks, and straight into the living room of the friend whose house I was at, which is when I made deer in the headlights eye contact with his 2 parents who are on the couch. Pausing only for a moment, I run out their back door, and jump into the pool. Ah, relief. I wanna know what the parents were thinking during all this. They just see their son's friend running naked and then jump in the pool. Sleepover. Woke up to weird noises. Look to my left to see my butt banging his girlfriend. Right there, in the same room. Sleepover. And you didn't join the threesome as they wanted, dude. My friend's 10th birthday. We had 6 friends over and we stayed up watching the first South Park movie. The birthday boy, Nolan, got a motor scooter as his big present. The next morning we woke up to small turds in obscure places on the floor, which we assumed was the fault of Nolan's dog. Nope, we would soon learn this was far worse. Fast forward, we are all taking turns on the scooter. Before it was my turn, my friend Curtis hopped on. As he pulled up and handed me the scooter, I noticed something peculiar. Brown stuff on the seat. We then asked Curtis what the frick it was and immediately regretted it. Curtis crapped his pants. Didn't change his clothes. Rode the scooter with his crap stained pants. I'm 20 years old and I will never forget that story. Most awkward birthday party of my life. This is something I've never really told anyone, but here goes. I had a friend I guess when I was around 10. Let's call him Jack. He invited me over to a sleepover at his house. We were going to watch Ghostbusters 2, which had just come out on VHS at Blockbuster. Anyways, I get there and I am surprised to see this other kid from my school there. He was about our age. Let's call him Jim. I remember going downstairs sometime after the movie started to get something to drink. When I came back upstairs and opened the door, I was shocked. Jack and Jim were on the bed. Jack was on his back and Jim was on top of him. I could see the baby erect penises basically banging into each other. I was like, WTF. My 10-year-old brain couldn't comprehend what was going on. Jack acted like it was no big deal and called it sword fighting and wanted to know if I wanted to join in. I just said nothing and proceeded to rewatch the movie. I never really talked to Jack again. TL Doctor saw two baby penises sword fighting and lost a friend. Was sleeping on the floor. While there, I had a pretty good view under the bed, and I came face to face with some seriously skidded up underpants. I wasn't impressed. I would regularly go to my buddy's house and his dad kept a sign on his bedroom door that read, "If you hear us a rockin', don't come a knockin'." My aunt had a sign on her door that read, "The orgy room." I got up to pee in the middle of the night. My friend's dog knocked me over, held me down, and started humping me. I was maybe 8. Very small and thin. I couldn't fight the dog off. Thank God I was wearing pants and not a gown. I basically had to lay there until he was done. I still don't like big dogs to this day. That's. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.